Okay, good day class. So today we're going to discuss the last topic of our midterms entitled the descriptive study designs. Okay, so learning objectives for today. At the end of the session, the students must be able to first discuss the uses of descriptive studies. Second, describe and differentiate the different types of studies in terms of unit of study, design process, unit of analysis, method of analysis, and interpretation. And lastly, discuss the strengths and limitations of the different types of descriptive study designs. As we have discussed nung mga previous topics natin in epidemiology, when we talk about the branches of epidemiology, we have two, di ba? Descriptive and analytical. And today, ang main focus natin would be the descriptive studies, and pag-usapan natin yung different tools, no, or yung mga methods on how to obtain yung main goal ng descriptive studies or descriptive epidemiology. Ano kasi main goal niya? That is to generate hypothesis. Okay? And ano pa yung gusto niyang gawin? Gusto niya is to answer yung distribution of health-related states, wherein sasagutin mo yung either yung who, yung when, or yung when, diba? Yan yung mga sinasagot natin. Okay? So, in our slide, sabi dito, describe a disease or health condition phenomenon, and lastly, syempre, generate hypothesis. And we have two types of descriptive study design. We have the aggregate and individual. When we talk about aggregate, that means yung mga pinag-uusapan natin dito or yung mga units na involve, no, yung units of analysis that are involved in aggregate study designs are grouped, no? They are in groups. Okay, so pangkalahatan sila. So dito, ecologic study or yung natawag na correlational. On the other hand, we have individual. So, nasa pangalan niya na, no? As is. So, that means we are only focusing on an individual subset o kaya an individual person or an individual variable, an individual disease occurrence, ganun, no? So, isa lang yung focus. So, ano yung mga nasa individual study designs? We have the case report, case series, or yung lastly, yung prevalence studies or yung descriptive cross-sectional study. So again, let me just reiterate, no? Descriptive study designs that we will be discussing are the following. So case report, case series, prevalence or yung cross-sectional, and lastly, we have the ecologic or yung correlational studies. So first, case report. So pag sinabing case report, no, they are relatively simple way to investigate causes of disease, no? Gusto nating ma-investigate yung causes of disease. Okay? Especially, anong klaseng cause of disease? Yung mga rare diseases. That means yung occasional lang nangyayari or yung they are not common at all, no? Disease occurrence that are not common, no? Rare diseases. Okay, so clinicians in this type of studies typically identifies an unusual or unique feature of a disease or a patient's history. So this type of studies document unusual medical occurrences, no, that might be first clues in the identification of a new disease. So ano man yung makita ng mga clinicians na something new or unusual, okay, it might lead to identification of a new or a novel disease, okay, or pwede rin makapag-develop yung mga clinicians ng new therapeutic effect, no, or even adverse effect ng mga exposure. So maaring because of a particular exposure, maaring maganda pala yung nangyari sa patient ko, or mas lumala yung nangyari or may bagong naganap sa kanya because of a particular exposure. So case report, going back to the slide, it detailed presentation of a single case. Isang kaso lang. Okay? Isang kaso lang. Generally, report of a new or unique finding, sabi ko nga kanina, a rare disease. No? Most common type of studies published in medical journals. For example, yung mga previous undescribed disease, so document unusual medical occurrences, unexpected link between diseases, no? Uy, si disease A pala, may kinalaman kay disease B, no? Parang ganun, no? Unexpected new therapeutic effect, and lastly, adverse effect. Okay? So, basically, si COVID, yung patient zero ni COVID-19 back then, noong 2018-2019, okay, yung patient zero or yung the initial patient who got infected with the COVID-19, the one who ate the bat soup, yun yung alleged theory. Okay, so basically yung report ng clinician regarding that particular patient, that is considered as a case report. Okay, so on the other hand, meron din tayong case series. Okay, so case series or collections of individual case reports. So pinagsama-sama na yung mga case reports which may occur within a fairly short period of time. They are a group of patients that experience similar diagnosis. With case series, prevalence of disease can be assessed. So, case series, ito na yung a group of case reports, no? Kasi 'di ba case reports, uy, may nangyayari sa isang individual. Kailangan ko i-report. Kailangan gumawa tayo ng study regarding that particular individual, no? Para if ever another clinician would see that type of study, makakagawa din sila or magkakaroon din sila ng idea regarding anong nangyayari dun sa patient nila. Okay? So, case series, it is a experience of a group of patients with similar diagnosis dun sa isang case report. Similar diagnosis that are unusual, as is, unusual or rare occurrences. So, assesses prevalent diseases. Okay? Early means to identify the beginning or presence of an epidemic, and generally report on new or unique condition. So maybe the only realistic design for rare disorders. So if you are not familiar, no, COVID-19 was actually diagnosed way before nagkaroon ng way before report na nagkaroon ng epidemic sa China, because the government there, since they control the media, tinago muna nila yung COVID-19, and that ang adverse effect nun is kumalat siya sa buong mundo. So similarly, meron din tayong mga tinatawag na MERS-CoV na nangyari sa Middle East, no? Hindi siya agad kumalat since yung case report on a single individual natanggap ng ibang mga clinicians, no, and gumawa sila ng case series, and because of that, multiple countries were ready to create a health surveillance, no, health surveillance system, and para ma-prevent yung pagkalat ng MERS-CoV infection. Okay, so just to give you an idea, no, kung gaano ka-importante ang case report and case series. Okay, so these are the similarities between case report and case series, no? So they describe the experience of a single case or a group of patients with similar diagnosis. It is used to document unusual medical occurrences and provide first clues in recognition of disease, identification of risk factors, or effects of exposures. So dito pa lang kay case report and case series, nasasagot na natin ano yung mga possible risk factors, possible signs and symptoms of the diseases, possible effects of exposure, no? But we cannot test yung validity ng mga yun. We can just identify. Kasi yun nga, di ba? Pag descriptive epidemiology, we're trying to give descriptions. Hindi pa natin siya pwedeng ma-verify na, ito talaga yun. Hindi mo pa. We can generate hypothesis, but we cannot still test the hypothesis yet. Okay? So, lastly, informative for very rare disease with few established risk factors. Ayan, bigyan namin kayo ng example, to give you an example, to completely understand case study and case series. Let's just take a quick look dito sa example na to. Okay. So, sabi dito, Pneumocystis carinii. So, Pneumocystis carinii is an example of fungi. No? It's a fungi. Dati, it was considered as a parasite, but however, ayon sa kanyang genetics, dito, molecular structures, no? Tsaka yung kanyang genome, no? Genetic code, yan, nakalimutan ko na. Genetic code, siya ay isang fungi. So, Pneumocystis carinii is a fungi. Pneumocystis carinii, pneumonia, and Kaposi's sarcoma. So, Kaposi's sarcoma is a type of neoplasm naman, no? So, and Kaposi's sarcoma in young, previously healthy homosexual males in Los Angeles, California. So, bakit naging case report to or case series? See, because back then, 1980s, so 1980s tong case report na to, no? Or case series. Noong 1980s, the PCP or yung Pneumocystis carinii pneumonia and Kaposi's sarcoma would only tend to show on geriatric patients. Ibig sabihin, yung mga matatandang pasyente. Okay? So, yun yung normal na disease occurrence. However, ang nangyari, lumalabas siya sa mga younger patients. Sabi dito, di ba? In young, previously healthy homosexual males in Los Angeles, California. So, bakit kaya lumilitaw yung mga yan? Whereas, madalas naman ang PCP and Kaposi's sarcoma sa mga geriatric immunocompromised patients. Immunocompromised meaning low immune system. Diba? Yung mga matatanda. So, nag-hypothesize sila, no, na these diseases, no, or itong condition na to na sarcoma, ang hypothesis nila is regarding the risk factors for the development of AIDS, no. Bago pa nila ma-recognize na ang AIDS ay AIDS, no, ito pa lang yung nangyayari back then. Okay? And nung inaral nila yung risk factors, okay, they diagnosed that these homosexual males were practicing multiple sex partners, at saka unsafe sexual practices. And other than that, na nakakalat yung tinatawag na human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, which would then lead to AIDS. AIDS, acute immunodeficiency syndrome. So yung mga young, previously healthy homosexual males na to, bumaba yung kanilang CD4 count, yung kanilang immune system, no? Yung protection nila against normal foreign tag dito, pathogens. So, mas madali silang ma-infect ng Pneumocystis carinii, kaya nagkakaroon sila ng PCP, and lumalabas yung Kaposi's sarcoma. Okay? But, para lang ma-clarify, no, it is not only the descriptive analytic design. So, descriptive descriptive study design. Descriptive study design work hand in hand with the analytic study designs. Okay? So, itong mga case report, case series na to, it is just a small part, pero it is a small but significant part of the whole picture ng diagnosis or ng identification or ng pagka-discover ng AIDS. Okay? So, ito naman, another example of importance of case study and case series is when Critch and Johnson, no? So, si Critch and Johnson to, sila yung dito. Okay? They reported case series of 3 men with angiosarcoma. Okay? So, angiosarcoma, yung cancer ng kanilang yung inner lining ng blood vessels nila ay tinutubuan ng tumors, no? So ito angiosarcoma of the liver, ibig sabihin yung mga blood vessels in their liver nagkakaroon ng tumors. Okay, so 3 males who worked in vinyl chloride plant develop angiosarcoma of the liver. So, noong 1974, a lot of people are working in vinyl chloride plants because nga yung mga recordings back then, they are vinyls, no? Yung malalaking parang CD, no? Malaki sila. So, ang hypothesis back then was occupational exposure to vinyl chloride is associated with hepatic angiosarcoma. So because they are exposed, no, dun sa chemicals or sa chemical fumes ng mga vinyl chlorides, no, and they also assessed na yung hazards of their workplace. Bukod doon is yung kanilang yung kanilang safety precautions ay kulang, no, yung mga standard operating procedures kulang. So yun, no, nag-culminate na nag-develop ng hepatic angiosarcoma. So, they have detected yung mga risk factors involved. So just like any other study designs, case report and case series have their own advantages tsaka disadvantages. So, a fundamental limitation of a case report is that it is only based on the experience of a single person. Isang tao lang. On a single individual. So, case report, ang pinaka-limitation niya would be, it is just for a single individual. Okay? This sometimes may not be sufficient to allow hypothesis formation and subsequent testing of hypothesis. And hindi ka rin makakapaggawa ng study for cause and effect relationship, no? So yun ang pinaka main disadvantage ng case report. However, ang case report, this is kung if you are going to pursue your dream na maging doctors, future medical doctors, no? Mas masanay na kayo gumawa ng case report because each of your patient gagawa niya yan ng case report. Okay? Ang case series naman, the limitations of case series, both case series and case report. First one, you cannot be used to test for the presence of a valid statistical association kasi very descriptive, no? Descriptions yung mga makikita mo doon sa studies na to. Okay, you're just trying to describe, so walang maayos na statistical data para maka-provide ng statistical association between the variables. Okay, and another thing is you cannot assess disease frequency. So the third type of descriptive study design is the cross-sectional or prevalence survey, okay, or study. So prevalence study or cross-sectional is the measurement of exposure and effect that are made at the same time. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, existing disease occurrence, no? Yung exposure, tsaka yung effect ng disease occurrence na yon on a particular point in time, no? At the same time. Okay? Measures the prevalence of a disease or other health outcomes in certain occupations. So, maganda din siya on certain occupations. So, prevalence surveys, okay, or prevalence studies, they provide information on the prevalence of disease. No? Yung prevalence, yung ano ba, kung gaano ba karami yung nag-exist na disease occurrence on a particular point in time, as we have mentioned earlier, or any other health outcomes in certain occupations. For example, ito. So, a questionnaire has been sent out to 2,856 workers in a rubber tire factory. So, the survey included information about respiratory symptoms suggestive of the development of obstructive pulmonary disease. So, after the analysis of data, it was revealed na 4 workers or 4 work areas with high prevalence of respiratory symptoms all involved with heated rubber. Okay? So, imagine niyo yung factory na yon, they have different workstations. Okay? Kasi some may work sa office lang, no? Doing admin works. Okay? O kaya yung mga HR, nandun lang. Some are stationed only on the entrance. So, sila yung nagagwardya. Tapos, yung mga workers nasa loob, no? And 4 of those work areas involved with heated rubber. Okay? So, naging risk factor na yun, no? Yung heated rubber. Okay? So, nung sinagot nila yung survey, yung mga individuals that are working dun sa 4 work areas na yun, sinagot nila na nagkakaroon sila ng development of obstructive pulmonary disease symptoms, no? And then, anong hypothesis na ginawa natin? Exposure to heated rubber is associated with development of respiratory symptoms. Okay? Prevalence study and cross-sectional study is also provides information about the frequency and characteristics of a disease by taking a snapshot of the health experience of the population at a specified time. Okay? So, which can be used by administrators, no? Yung health administrators to assess yung healthcare status and healthcare needs of the population. So, pwede nilang gamitin yung results of their prevalence study tsaka yung cross-sectional surveys, no? Yung mga results ng mga yon to assess or to evaluate ano na nga ba yung status or yung estado ng healthcare or healthcare needs ng kanilang nasasakupan, okay? Or yung mga pinag-aaralan nilang community or population. So, in the United States, meron silang tinatawag na National Health Survey Act, yung NHS, yan. It is established, ginagawa nila is na they provide periodic surveys to obtain data on the prevalence of acute and chronic illness, disabilities, and utilization of healthcare resource. So, tayo dito sa Pilipinas, wala pa tayong ganun ka-comprehensive na data gathering regarding healthcare, no? Ang pinakamalapit pa lang sa atin would be yung surveillance system, yung PIDSIR na tinuro natin or yung pinag-aralan natin na 2 topics ago. Okay? So, dito sa Pilipinas, ito pa lang, and mga iba't ibang mga iba't ibang survey na ginagawa ng DOH. Pero yung comprehensive for a general health of the Filipino, wala pa. So, sa United States, meron silang National Health Survey Act. Okay? Now, let us talk talk about naman yung limitation. So, ito limitation to, no? Limitation. So, kung kanina, yung mga case report tsaka yung case studies, they are only focusing on a single individual, tapos hindi siya pwede for statistical data, no? Tapos, hindi rin siya, kasi ang ginagawa niya lang is to describe or to give descriptions of the disease occurrence. Ang prevalence studies, on the other hand, if you remember earlier, I have mentioned na disease status and exposure are only assessed at a single point in time, no? At one point in time. So the problem is it is not possible to tell whether the problem or the exposure preceded or resulted from the disease. Ibig sabihin, on a single point in time, ganun lang, dun lang nangyari yung inaral natin, no? Hindi natin sila na-observe in a long run if that particular disease really happened, no? Or maaring yung disease na nararamdaman nila, iba pala yun dun sa pwedeng mangyari. Okay, to further understand what I'm trying to say, let us say na in a company, meron daw 200 workers. Ayan, okay? Yung nasa job A and nasa job B. So, 100 workers nasa job A, 100 workers nasa job B. So, hypothetically, yung job A comes with a hazardous, no, delikado exposure. Meron silang hazardous exposure. If we try to recall, yung anuhin na lang natin, give example yung kanina, no? Yung mga nasa heated rubber, so sila yung hazardous. And then sa job B, they are not exposed. Ibig sabihin, non-hazardous yung sa kanila. Next, we conducted a survey at a particular time. Let's say, yung point X, yan, ito muna. Ito yung ginawa nating survey. We might find out that the 4 times as many workers in job A had chronic respiratory syndromes. Nagkaroon sila ng chronic respiratory syndromes. Sino? Yung 20 tsaka yung 5. Okay? So, ito na yung prevalence study natin. Kasi one single point in time lang. Right? So, dyan, na-detect natin na 20 yung sa point X ay sa job A. Whereas yung sa B, 5 lang. Ibig sabihin, since they are working on a hazardous environment, mas prone sila or at risk sila sa chronic respiratory syndrome. Diba? However, baguhin natin. What if inaral natin yan noong point Y? Okay? So, tanggalin nyo na muna to. Okay? May iba nang gumawa ng study na yan. Okay, sige. Aralin natin siya ulit. Okay? Now, sa point Y, ang nangyari dito was nag-resign na yung mga nag-develop ng chronic respiratory syndrome. Okay? So, basically, sabihin natin yung 15 dito, nag-resign na. Okay? Itong 5 na to, hindi naman sila nag-resign, nandyan pa rin sila. So, may natira pa rin 5 nag-develop. O kaya sabihin natin, sige, lahat sila nag-resign. O yan, lahat yan nag-resign na. Okay? So now, nung ginawa natin yung study, tinanong natin, again, these are itong job A, hazardous yan, no? Job B, non-hazardous. So, tinanong natin sila ulit, since nag-resign na yung mga wala na, no? Yung mga individuals or some participants na nag-develop ng chronic respiratory syndrome, nung chinek natin ulit, 5 na lang yung sumagot na nag-develop sila ng chronic respiratory syndrome. Whereas dun sa non-hazardous, since hindi pa nag-resign yung nag-develop ng chronic respiratory syndrome, no, nangyari, nadagdagan pa ng 5. So, on this note, mapapansin nyo, if this particular point, dito tayo nag-aral, makikita nyo na mas mataas yung prevalence dun sa non-hazardous kaysa dun sa hazardous. Okay? So, this is the main limitation of prevalence study because we could only study a particular disease occurrence or yung cause and effect relationship only single point in time. Okay, so yun yung importante din whenever if you want to choose, no, or if you want to opt utilizing this type of study tool, no, kailangan alam mo rin yung significance ng time kung kailan mo gagawin yung prevalence study or kailan mo hahanapin yung mga data na significant for prevalence studies. So, this is another example to make it clear, no? Sabi niya dito, 3,102 participants were given comprehensive examination and extensive information was collected. Prevalence rates of CHD or yung chronic heart disease among white farm owners who did and did not do their own labor. So, ano nangyari? So, dito, ang ginawa nila is to explore a possible relationship with physical activity. The investigators compared, anong kinompare nila? Kinompare nila yung who did or did not do their own labor. And then, ano yung gusto nilang malaman? Yung prevalence ng chronic heart disease. Okay? So, in this case, it is impossible to determine whether the physical activity is truly protective of the farmers, no, with the symptoms of CHD, and they are more likely to decrease their physical activity. Okay? How is it impossible? Kasi kung makikita nyo yung kanyang hypothesis, no, prevalence rate of CHD not physically active in their work is 5 times higher than those engaged in farm work. So, mapapansin nyo, ang pinaka main point niya is physical activity. But it is really difficult to relate na yung those who are not physically active, no, they have 5 times higher na nagkaroon ng chronic heart disease than those who engage in farm work. It's really difficult. Okay? It's better na you have additional variables, no, to create or to suffice yung CHD diagnosis data. Okay? The last and descriptive analytic study is the Ecologic study. So, dito, to generate etiologic hypothesis and to evaluate the effectiveness of population interventions. So, meron tayong tatlong pag-aaralan dito: exploratory, ecologic comparison, ecologic trial. Exploratory, a comparison of frequency of disease among several groups within a group at different points in time. Pag ecologic comparison, frequencies of the exposure and the disease are determined per group and comparison is made among several groups. Pag ecologic trend naman, the assessment of trends over time. Okay? So, ecologic study or yung tinatawag din natin na correlational study. So, as I have mentioned in the beginning, sabi ko, ecologic study is the unit of analysis or groups of peoples rather than individual. Diba? So, ecologic study consider pattern of disease among population. Okay? So, it compares exposure and disease between groups. No? Take note of that. Tandaan nyo yun. Ang ecologic study, kino-consider niya yung pattern of disease among the population by comparison of exposure and disease between groups. Okay? So, it uses data from the entire population to compare disease frequency between different groups during the same time or in the same population at a different points in time. Okay, so basically what we are trying to say here is that the comparison can be done by comparing populations in different places, no? In a different places at the same time or in a time series. Okay? So ito, ibig sabihin, pwedeng isang point of time lang or pwedeng multiple points in time or time series. Comparing the same population in one place at a different times. Okay? Ecologic study measures that represent characteristics of entire populations are used to describe disease in relation to some factor of interest such as age, calendar time, utilization of health services, or consumption of food, medication, or other products. So, basically, it uses what we call aggregate data. Okay, ayan. Ecologic study uses aggregate data. So, for example, patterns of mortality from coronary heart disease. Okay, in 1960, death rates from 44 states were correlated with per capita cigarette sales. So, tinitingnan nila na yung CHD daw, death rates were higher in states with the most cigarette sales, maraming bumibili ng sigarilyo, and lowest with the least sales. Mababa daw doon sa mga mababang bumibili, and intermediate in the remainder. So, yung hypothesis dito, cigarette smoking causes fatal CHD. This observation contributed to the formulation of the hypothesis na cigarette smoking causes fatal CHD, which has been substantiated in a large number of subsequent analytic epidemiological studies. Ibig sabihin, since ecologic study, aggregate data to, kinumpare niya multiple states, no? Yung kanyang cause and effect relationship. Okay? So, kinumpare niya, naggawa siya ng comparison between the different variables na gamit niya, and then nakagawa siya ng hypothesis na cigarette smoking causes CHD, no? So, ayun. A couple of advantage or strength of ecologic studies that contributes to their frequent use as first step in investigating a possible exposure disease relationship is that meron tayong ecologic study is simple to conduct, tsaka it is inexpensive. The main reason is because information are readily available, no? Pwede mo na siyang makollect via the government, no? Kaya mga private health agencies that routinely gather demographic and product consumption data. So, this collected data can be correlated with disease incidence tsaka mortality. However, the main limitation of ecologic studies is that they are unable to link exposure with disease in particular individuals. So, mahirap nang gumawa ng other link, no, ng exposure to other individuals. Another one is, since the unit of analysis is group, that's the reason the effect at individual level cannot be illustrated. So, since this is group na, di ba? So, ito na yung main problem would be, hindi siya pwedeng makapag-describe on a single individual lang, no? So, lack of ability to control for the effects of potential confounding factors. So, for example, in 1964 to 1965, a study was conducted about the average per capita daily intake of pork in relation to breast cancer mortality rates in 28 countries. So, tinignan nila daily intake ng baboy. Tapos, relationship niyan sa breast cancer mortality rates in 28 countries. So, in the study, there was a strong positive correlation between the two variables, suggesting a possible association between pork intake and death from cancer. However, the increased intake of pork is not merely a marker for for the breast cancer, no? Napakahirap na sabihin na porket kumakain ka ng baboy, dito malaki na yung risk mo para magkaroon ng breast cancer. So it is really hard to to create a strong positive correlation between those two variables, no? So in correlational studies, it is really hard, no, or it is not possible to separate the effects of other confounding factors because we only have two main variables dito, diba? So the presence of a correlation does not necessarily imply the presence of a valid statistical association, and the lack of correlation in such studies does not necessarily imply the absence of a valid statistical association. So tatandaan nyo, so another good example pala dito, no, is ayan, yung tinatawag nating ecologic fallacy, para mas maintindihan nyo. It is ascribing to a member of a group characteristics that they in fact do not possess as individuals. So, pag sinabing ecologic fallacy, no, this is one of the major limitation of ecologic study. Ang mapapansin nyo na yung punta na tayo sa second slide. Yeah. Ecologic fallacy is when conclusions about the relationship between exposure and an outcome are made at the individual level based on ecologic data. Ibig sabihin, napakababaw ng inyong reasoning or yung paggawa ng hypothesis, no? Kasi yun lang yung pwedeng mabigay ng relationship between exposure and outcome. Okay? So, this is ecologic fallacy. So, ayan. For example, if countries with more Protestants tend to have higher suicide rates, then Protestants must be more likely to commit suicide. Diba? So, nagkakaroon ng bias. Bias occurs because the association observed at group level does not necessarily represent the association that exists at the individual level. Okay? So, another example dyan is kunwari, ito, pinaka-basic na lang. Lahat daw, all patients who had COVID, o yan, are drinking water. Okay? So, basically, ang hypothesis niya, patients who drink water will have COVID. Diba? Yes, all of those COVID patients, they drink water because they are humans. They are tao sila. So basically, 100% na totoo yan na the COVID drinkers, they drink water. COVID-19 patients, they drink water. So that is an example of ecologic fallacy. So you need to take note, or you need to have what we call the third variable, a confounding variable. Ito yung sagot dyan. Confounding variable. Ibig sabihin, ito yung magiging pangatlong variable which could relate or influence both the independent and the dependent variable. Yung exposure at saka yung outcome mo. Okay? And this confounding variable, usually, makikita na natin yan sa analytic study designs because sobrang daling gumawa ng hypothesis but it is difficult to test or analyze the hypothesis. Okay? So, that's it. I think, yeah, that's it. So, this is the end of discussion. So, if you have any questions again, just email me dito. Apelido ko muna pala. Zamora, Tuldok, Renz, Iron. AUF. Okay, so thank you for listening, and this will be our last discussion of the midterms, and good luck and God bless.